Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Newgrange on this, the shortest day of the year, December 21st, 2021. We are delighted to be here with you this morning, and we are absolutely thrilled to have so many people joining us on site. With me this morning is my dear friend, Dr. Frank Prendergast, who's Ireland's leading archaeoastronomer. And before we begin and before we start waiting for the dawn, I want to take this opportunity to pay tribute to Professor George Hogan, who passed away just last December. Every December 21st, Professor Hogan would join us here for dawn in recent years. He was always such a support to me in particular, but to all of the staff at Bóinne. His enthusiasm for archaeology never waned, and he was a wonderful ambassador for the science. He worked at Nowth for over 50 years and made some great discoveries. He lived a long, wonderful, adventurous life full of joy and love and great science, and we miss him dearly. We just want to pay tribute to him and to his work and to all the people who worked alongside him, who deserve great praise for bringing Nowth to the general public. We have a series of photographs from the excavations at Nowth with George, taken through the ages. And when he began at Nowth in 1962, it was just a large overgrown mound, but he made some of the most extraordinary discoveries. Among them, you can see him here showing the then Taoiseach Charles Haughey, the wonderful base head. And this photograph was taken in 1967, the day they rediscovered the chamber at the Western Tomb at Nowth. And here he is looking very happy, sitting outside the Eastern Tomb at Nowth. And Nowth, of course, is world famous for the collection of megalithic art. And this is a very typical pose for George. In the days before drones and health and safety, I suppose I should add, George often had to be held aloft on the ladder while he took the photographs of the site. His contribution to archaeology is immeasurable, and we want to give our deepest condolences to all of the Hogan family, and in particular to Fiona, who is with us here at Newgrange today. And just before we leave the tribute to Professor Hogan, here he is, in his own words, in 2012, describing the rediscovery of the great tombs of Nowth.
Well, we discovered the first big passage under the main mound in 1967. Now, that was quite a substantial site, very large site, and we thought that was the only structure that existed in the big mound, because as far as we could know, there was only one such structure at Newgrange, and we therefore thought that we had discovered the tomb at Nowth. But then the astonishing thing was the following year, in 1968, in between, we continued on the excavations and discovered even a larger and greater site on the opposite side of the large mound. So within 2 seasons, we discovered 2 vast tombs.
Thanks again, Professor George Hogan, for all that you contributed to Irish archaeology. Before we talk about what we're here today for, I just want to acknowledge the wonderful crowd we have with us this morning. Last year, Frank and I were here for the webcast, and we were just here on our own. And I said at the end of the webcast on December 22nd that this time next year, I said, we'll be dancing on the grass. And we are. And even though it doesn't look as if we're through this pandemic yet, we're a lot further on than we were this year. So just enjoy some of the atmosphere from Newgrange this morning for a couple of minutes before I turn to Frank, who will explain what we're all waiting for. what a wonderful sense of joy there is here this morning, knowing that the longest night of the year is over. Frank, why is the winter solstice so significant?
Good morning, Claire and listeners. Today is the day, the actual day of winter solstice. Astronomically, at 4 o'clock today, the precise moment of solstice will happen. Now, in astronomical terms, that means the longitude of the sun is 290 degrees. That means nothing to you or I, does it?
No, not
So
to
we
me.
might try and explain it in a different way. To people watching the sun on the horizon, from Newgrange or anywhere else for that matter, the sun will rise at its limit as far southeast as it can possibly go in the year. And what that means is that the arc of sunrise, from sunrise to sunset in the sky, will be lowest in the sky, giving us, in fact, the shortest day. And after today, the amount of light will gradually increase. At Newgrange, you see in this wonderful graphic a cutaway, a side view showing the beam of light penetrating the monument through this very special architectural feature called the roof box. And the light beam reaches the floor of the burial chamber inside. And that burial chamber is a very special construct. It is cruciform in shape, and it has 3 recesses, one to the right, the left, and the end. And those recesses contained the cremated remains of the dead that were deposited there, along with the unburned bones of some children, as was discovered. And that phenomena happens for a period of days. And here you've got this wonderful view of the majesty of the carved entrance stone at Newgrange, one of 97 that encircle the base or delimit the base of the 90-metre diameter cairn, making Newgrange the largest such megalithic tomb in northwest Europe. And it is precisely astronomically aligned as well towards the rising sun on the days around and centred about winter solstice itself. So there you have the beautiful tri-spiral, or the triple spiral if you wish, and the embellishment right across the whole of the facade of that stone. And these stones were specially sourced, as we commented upon yesterday. Nothing was procured locally. Most of the exotic material came from afar, involving huge effort by the people who lived and farmed in this valley at that time. And if we move on to a graphic to, in fact, reconstruct and show the phenomena of winter solstice sunrise on the actual horizon. Here you've got the simulated view in a new product that we've developed in Stellarium for Newgrange, and you see the rising sun as it would have been today had the cloud not interfered with our wonderful enjoyment. And there you see the rising sun today as far south as it will go on the horizon. And if you look at that distinctive tree pattern on the horizon there, that's a very useful visual cue against which we can reference and remember. So it really needed no technology. All it needed was acute observing by us and by our ancestors in the distant past as well. And they would have been visually and extremely well aware of the limits of the rising sun and the setting sun through the year. And that gives us, in effect, the solar cycle. And last year we were here, Claire, to enjoy the same spectacle. The sun's travelled all the way up the horizon through almost 90 degrees to summer solstice, and now it has returned.
Yeah.
And at this magic moment, we have the rising sun to witness. In the Neolithic, 3,200 years before Christ, or BC, when this tomb was actually constructed, the sun rose to the right of its present position, all due to a slight change in the tilt of the Earth's axis of rotation. Notice how it's now rising out of the same tree line, whereas today it would have been to the left. So that shift of about 2 solar diameters is actually marked and noticeable, even to our eyes using this program. In a week's time, the disk will have moved about 1 diameter backwards. So it is that pronounced. This magic day of solstice is, 1 or 2 days when we're at the limit. The sun has turned. Now we're looking forward to longer days and, in fact, the arrival of eventually spring once we get through the months of winter ahead of us.
Well, we can hear great noise and celebration behind us, so we might go back to the front of the monument and see what's happening there, because there is a great feeling of release and joy and celebration. Even though we cannot see the sun, we know that it is the time of sunrise. And if we had clear skies, the sun would have cleared the horizon at 8:54, and the first beam of light would enter at 8:58. And that cheer that we heard just then is what we call the Newgrange roar.
Roar.
And when we're waiting in the chamber for sunrise on those days when we have lottery winners, it is the cheer that when you're in the chamber at Newgrange, you cannot actually see the outside. And when you're in for quite a while, you lose sense of how much time has passed. So to hear the Newgrange roar when you're inside the chamber is like a sign from the other side saying, the sun is up, we're through the longest night, time to celebrate. And then the first beam of light hits the floor 4 minutes after the sun clears, that first flash, as you call it. And the sun stays in the chamber for 17 minutes. And somebody was talking to me this morning about all these exactness, the 8:54s, the 8:58s, the 17 minutes. And what I said was there was nothing approximate about the building of Newgrange. Everything about Newgrange is exact. Nothing was left to chance.
I've no doubt that in prehistory, people gathered and assembled and travelled from afar to be at special places like this. And if we go to Britain and Scotland, where you have Stonehenge and you have Maze Howe, the same would have happened.
Yeah.
And these places of ceremony and ritual and enjoyment and gathering, and we still have it today.
Yeah. And what I always think, no more than as we do now, we have kind of a formal presentation of the solstice. Like we're here and we're talking about it and we have a kind of a structure to our presentation. But there's also the informal. We know that people are here that we haven't seen for a couple of years. We know that people come here to meet old friends. There are people who come here to Newgrange for sunrise that don't come here during the year. They just enjoy being here for sunrise. And we can see the next generations coming up. Since you and I started coming here for sunrise a long time ago now, we have gone through several generations, I suppose, at that stage. And it is just great to see the young people coming and celebrating and connecting with their heritage, because this is our iconic site. This is our touchstone. This is the place where it all started. And when all over the world, when people connect with us on these days, there's one little patch of grass in the Bóinne Valley where we stand and we wait for sunrise, just as people did 5,000 years ago, and we're very justifiably proud of it.
What I like, Claire, is that people mark their calendars today.
Yeah.
And in prehistory, they would have done so in a different way, but nonetheless, it would have been a time of year to travel and to be at these sacred places. Yeah. And to meet with and conjoin with not only everybody in their society and from afar, but also to be aware of the movement of the sun and its relationship in a cosmological sense and in a religious sense to what was inside the tomb, the spirits of the dead and the ancestors.
Yeah. And I wonder, I often think too that the whoever was in charge, the astronomers, the really important people like you, Frank, who were here 5,000 years ago, and were telling the people, come to this monument, come for sunrise on the shortest days. Yes. And we will show you what we can do. We can capture the rays of the sun and bring it inside this wonderful place. It is almost as if the sun deity itself came to earth and lit up the chamber. And we have some remarkable footage from last year, which was taken as part of our research program. We showed it yesterday. We got such a wonderful reaction to it. But this is the unfolding of the light in the chamber at Newgrange, taken last year. The extraordinary thing about that footage is that we're seeing the light as it was designed to be seen. Because we've closed the front door for this research programme. This is an opportunity presented to us by the restrictions and having the chamber closed. So the front door is actually closed. So all that light is just coming through that small opening above the doorway. And this is speeded up to 3 minutes, but the whole light show takes 17 minutes. And you could see how bright it was when it was at its peak. And even as the sunbeam is retreating down the passage, it is still leaving this lingering brightness in the chamber.
I'd like to mention my good colleague, Professor Tom Ray of the Dublin Institute for Advanced Studies, who did some fabulous work at Newgrange some years ago. And it was his determination that in the Neolithic, the sunbeam would have reached the backstone of the end recess because of that different position of sunrise then, as we have demonstrated in the stellarium model just a few minutes ago. Meath County Council produced a book of poetry in 2010, and in that is a poem by Seamus Heaney, one of our greatest poets. And some lines from his poem make wonderful reading when he says, "Creeping along the floor of the passage grave, to backstone and capstone, to hold its candle inside the cosmic hill."
And another person who had a great graw for Newgrange and all it symbolised and realised the symbolism of this monument. And we're celebrated, and have always been celebrated, in poetry and in music and in stories. This is an important place. But it didn't always look like it does today. No. And people often wonder, what did Newgrange look like before excavations? And when I started work here as a child guide, people used to say, I remember coming to Newgrange before any of this was done, before any of the excavations were done, before any of the restoration on the outside was done. So we have a series of photographs of Newgrange as it was before restoration. These were all taken, that was taken in 1950. And you can still see the standing stones outside the monument, but the whole front wall of the monument has collapsed forward. So you can see the entrance stone there is almost buried in collapsed cairn. And an owl bullock standing on top of the monument, having the time of his life, never thinking that he was immortalised in photography forever. And even at that time, even though the roof box wasn't open, you can see the lintel. And here's the mother and daughter out on a visit in, I think, 1910. And the big trees, we still have some of those trees left growing around the site, but all the trees that were growing out of the monument are long since gone. And that is what people saw when they came to Newgrange. The monument was rediscovered in 1699. And the electricity was only put in 1954. In 1955, Fáilte Ireland, or Bord Fáilte as they were then, bought the land on which Newgrange stands on behalf of the Irish state. And then in 1962, the authorities were already aware that there was an awful lot of tourists coming to the site. So they asked Professor O'Kelly if he could, he was the leading archaeologist of the time, at that time, if he could investigate to see if there was anything left from the original time and if he could restore the outside of the monument. And all of the white quartz that you see on the outside of Newgrange now was found on site. Not one crumb of extra stone was brought in for the restoration. And even on a dull day like today, you can see how the white quartz catches the light. And sometimes I think, we rely on the sat-nav now to get us here, or not get us here, as the case may be. But even in the green countryside of the Bóinne Valley, when you're trying to find Newgrange, it's easy to find because of the white quartz. It's like a big signpost saying, we are here. But it not only attracts people to the monument, it also reflects the glory of the sun. And we want to give a shout out today to our Neolithic cousins in England and in Scotland. because, of course, we are not the only monument that has an alignment to winter solstice. Our friends in English Heritage will be at Stonehenge this afternoon watching for sunset. And this is some photographs and film footage that they sent to us and kindly shared with us from last December 2020, as the sun was setting at Stonehenge. And it's nice to have that connection across these islands and knowing, as you said earlier, that when our party is over, the party at Stonehenge is just beginning.
What intrigues me, Claire, is how these monuments and their landscapes keep giving and giving in terms of new discovery, and we're never finished. And as new scholars come to bring to bear their energies and apply them to these sites, new findings continue and will continue to be published, leading to a greater understanding of what these monuments meant in the prehistoric past. These great trilithons, meaning 3 stones, 2 uprights and a lintel. Sarsens, they're called, which is a kind of coarse-grained sandstone. Some of it procured from nearby and other stones from Wales. But the axis of Stonehenge is decidedly towards the setting sun at the winter solstice. And it's now well understood from the analysis of landscape and other artifacts that people processed there and probably timed their arrival to arrive at Stonehenge to synchronize with the setting of the sun.
Yeah.
Remarkable.
Yeah. And there's a wonderful exhibition opening in the British Museum in the new year on Stonehenge Revisited, with some of the new information. And I know some of our most precious artefacts are going from the National Museum of Ireland to the British Museum on loan for that exhibition. So hopefully we'll be able to travel over to London and see it. And a big shout out too to our Scottish cousins, our Neolithic cousins in Orkney. And Orkney is a long way from here, but there were very close connections in prehistory between the Orkney Islands and the Boyne Valley. And this is their wonderful monument of Maes Howe, which is aligned again to setting sun at the winter solstice. And unfortunately, no more than ourselves, they won't have people in the chamber this year, but they are also webcasting it live, so you'll be able to pick it up somewhere, and they have an information program. We know that because when we asked them to send us some photographs from Maes Howe, they said, can we have some from Newgrange? So the connections between these ancient monuments are still strong, and we love to celebrate the connections between our sites and the sites on the rest in a wider world. So happy solstice to all our Neolithic cousins.
So much is now better understood about the connections between Orkney and the Boyne Valley, and how people journeyed and travelled that enormous distance, you know, by seacraft. And I sat down with my maps one day and worked out the distance and thought about the hazardous journeys that they must have made to get there and back in those times. And I think I calculated something like probably a couple of months in terms of seagoing.
Yeah, we were talking here this morning. Would we make it from sunrise? This is Claire's Phil Collins Live Aid moment. Would I make it from sunrise at Newgrange to sunset in Orkney?
Yes.
And we decided we could do it from sunrise to Newgrange to sunset at Stonehenge quite easily.
Okay.
But we don't think, without the old Concorde or something similar, that we would make it to Orkney, because it is such an extraordinary journey. They're so far north. And yet it was such an important place. Yeah. I would say as important in the Neolithic as Bóinne was here. And that is why bit of competition, I'd say, between the two places.
I would think
a bit of healthy competition, and also a friendly rivalry, I'm sure, as well. But it's great to celebrate those connections here.
And it was the trading of artefacts.
Yes.
That are identifiable as having come from, say, Orkney, that arrived down here, and vice versa, in terms of the ideas and the exchange of knowledge and the influence of the megalithic art, and how you get the style of art repeating itself.
Yeah. And it's fantastic if any of you ever get a chance to go to Orkney to see how much familiar art there is there. There is a stone in Pirrawall, which is almost exactly the same as our entrance stone. So it's nice to think of all of the connections right across the world. And I know that people are watching us from all around the world this morning, and we're delighted to have all the greetings and the photographs and the well wishes, and it is just wonderful to know that the longest night is over, and that shortly somebody somewhere will say that there's a grand stretch in the evenings. And even as we head into the coldest part of winter, there's a reassurance in that. Our circle seems to have broken up, and we just have a little good-humoured chat going on now.
You could well imagine that in the Neolithic, the number of people assembled here would have been vast.
Yeah. And there's the new generation coming up, the solstice babies.
There's the view through the roof box again from a specially mounted camera of the horizon.
Maybe we just take a short trip inside, you know, with that lovely magic LiDAR
Let's do it.
journey into the past. The Discovery Programme have scanned the monument in its entirety. So if for some reason poor Newgrange disappeared or was beamed back up wherever it came from, we have this wonderful scan of the image. Maybe Frank, you'd talk us through it, please.
Well, using the greatest of technologies, in my view, laser scanning, and how we can recreate exactly in a digital world the architecture of the tomb, the passage tomb, the orthostats on the left and the right, and then the capstones, the lintels, entering the chamber, some of which these stones you can see are leaning inwards over time now, making it a tight squeeze to get in.
I was talking to somebody this morning who said, remembered coming here as a child and it seemed so much bigger. And when they came back as an adult, they thought the monument had shrunk, but I had to break it to them that they'd probably grown.
And there you see elements of the cruciform architecture of the tomb, the side recesses, the end recess, the basin stones. And so much art, megalithic art, decorates the interior of the tomb. There you see the corbelled chamber, the roof, on top of which, bear in mind, there is nearly 100,000 cubic meters of material, consisting mostly of turfs of grass and water rolled stones collected locally.
Yeah. We think they brought those stones from the terraces below us, the terraces below the Bóinne. And I always imagined that bringing the big stones to the site was quite the task, but they were real skilled people who would have transported the stones. But the smaller stones that make up the bulk of the cairn, they would have been carried in baskets on our backs up from the river terraces.
What a job.
Oh, I know, because, you know, to walk from here down to the banks of the River Bóinne it's a pleasant stroll. But even in this day and age, to walk up from the river with your arms swinging.
If the camera can zoom in on the front entrance stone.
There's the
We
river
might get it
below
later.
us. And you can see some of our hooper swans down by the river. They come back every winter to us.
There are Icelandic visitors, Claire,
Yeah.
migrating here from Iceland, spend the winter here, maybe comparatively warmer. But if you look at the curbstone, the entrance curbstone, have a careful look at the very base, if we can zoom in even closer. And archaeology tells us that this stone was placed in situ, then it was carved. How do we know that? Because the megalithic art terminates along a horizontal line, indicating a separation between the stone socketed into the ground and then the carving began. So that megalithic art does not continue below ground level.
Or what was
Slight-
then ground level.
Or what was then. There's a
Yeah.
slight difference, obviously.
I often think that they were waiting for some really talented artist to come to decorate this stone because they knew it was in such an important position.
Yeah.
And the great thing about this morning is that this solstice is that the entrance to the doorway is blocked, and you can see our wooden door there as they were paying homage, I think, at the entrance there this morning. You could see the entrance blocked up with our modern wooden door, which is blocking off any light which goes into the chamber. You can see to the right of the entrance, there is the big stone slab, which would have sealed the tomb, almost biblical in that kind of sense. But obviously it was fixed there after excavation, and we don't pull it over because we can't be sealing in our visitors. I don't think they would appreciate it.
No.
So what we recreated for this solstice and for last year, so that we can witness the light as it was designed to be seen, is we have created, our Michael Bóinne, one of our carpenters in the Trim Depot, created this wonderful door which blocks out all light. And it's a wonderful opportunity to do that. And you can see he very carefully padded around the door so that it doesn't damage the stone. The Office of Public Works and the National Monument Service are very careful always to protect the monuments. And whereas we encourage visitors to the monuments, our primary concern is the protection and conservation of these wonderful heritage assets. And the great responsibility we have now is not just to the people of Ireland, but because we are a UNESCO World Heritage Site, we are protecting these monuments on behalf of humanity, which is a great responsibility, but one we very proudly take on, because these monuments are of exceptional universal value, outstanding universal value. They are on a small group of elite sites that are on the World Heritage List. And we were inscribed on the World Heritage List on the 11th of December 1993, along with some other wonderful sites that day, including Machu Picchu and other sites. If you go on to the UNESCO World Heritage List, you can see the list of World Heritage Sites all around the world. We're very proud to be among that number.
I like to think of all of these great tombs as, encapsulating people's belief systems, their cosmology. It is a materialization of what they believed in. And these monuments, being lithic, made of stone, were designed to last. And they have lasted. We've lost some, obviously, but mostly they have survived. Yeah. And we are so fortunate.
And what has protected them through all those years are the communities who live beside the monuments. And we were talking yesterday about the builders of these monuments being farmers. We are still farmers in the Bóinne Valley. But for thousands and thousands of years, long before there was legislation to protect these monuments were protected by the communities who lived alongside them. They ploughed around them, they didn't go through them, and we're very grateful to them. We're very proud, I think, all of us who live in the Bóinne Valley, to have a World Heritage Site on our doorstep. I'm going to go back and talk to, we have a wonderful treat today. We are delighted to be able to share this footage with you. We were talking during the year about Professor O'Kelly. We remember him every day at Newgrange and his contribution to archaeology, and we celebrate his great knowledge and his great discoveries. But we were talking about a film that was made in 1979 at the solstice with Professor O'Kelly. So we went looking for it and we found it. And this is Professor O'Kelly, in his own words, at Newgrange on December 21st, 1979, filmed for a programme which was very popular in its day, Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World. It was first aired in October 1980. Enjoy.
Nowhere on Earth is there more spectacular proof of ancient fascination with the changing skies than here. This is Newgrange Tomb in Ireland. Set on a hilltop above the River Bóinne, it is an almost unknown wonder. Yet this is the oldest building in the world. Faced with gleaming and immaculate quartz, it was built 5 centuries before the pyramids. It is 5,000 years old. Every year, on one special day, Newgrange Tomb is a place of pilgrimage for the archaeologist who restored it, Professor Michael O'Kelly. He comes here in the pre-dawn darkness because this is December the 21st, the Winter Solstice, the shortest day of the year. Professor O'Kelly began to unlock the secret of Newgrange when he uncovered a strange slit above the door. At first, its purpose baffled him. The tomb has an inner chamber magnificently vaulted. Oddly, it contained the bones of just 4 adults and 1 child. His hunch was that the slit above the door was to let the sun into the tomb to wake the spirits of the dead. This would probably happen, he thought, at dawn on Midwinter's Day. His hunch proved to be correct. Through the slit on the shortest day of the year come the first rays of the sun as it rises above the ridge on the far side of the River Bóinne. Michael O'Kelly will never forget the first time he witnessed the astounding phenomenon which the builders of Newgrange designed their Stone Age cathedral to capture.
The first shot of orange-red light penetrated right to where I was sitting, gradually widened to a 17-centimeter band, illuminated the whole interior. I could feel the spirits of the dead all round about me, and I wondered if a voice shouldn't come and say something, even if only to tell me to get the hell out of here. But nothing happened. Silence. The band of light slowly crossed the floor, and then a point came after 17 minutes, sudden cut-off, darkness. How to explain it? I don't know, but quite obviously, the builders of this place had thought the whole thing out, had organized this slit so that it would be level with the local horizon, and so that when the tip of the sun appears, there's a horizontal line from the horizon through the slit right to the center of the floor.
The world's oldest building guards one of the world's oldest mysteries. Perhaps people gathered here 5,000 years ago to commune with the spirits of the dead. Perhaps this unique dawn marked the end of the old year, the beginning of the new. Whatever the truth, the marvel of Newgrange displays the central importance of the movements of the heavens to the builders of the ancient world.
Isn't that just wonderful? And it's of its time, but I remember Arthur C. Clarke's Mysterious World being aired. I don't remember that particular program, but it was the best program for a lot of us who loved these kind of mysterious places. So here we are on December 21st, and we didn't see the sun light this morning, but boy, have we had a celebration. And our celebration is that the longest night is over and we're all safely into a new year. And for those of you who think that we're not getting through this, be very reassured. We are. We've come a long way since this time last year. We have enjoyed this morning with all of our old friends. We were here last year on our own and in the rain, in fact, on December 21st. So the longest night is over. A whole new generation is coming up who will celebrate these monuments. And all that we have to say from Frank and I this morning is a very happy solstice, a very happy new year, and here's to good things to come in the new year. Good morning from Newgrange.